All right, Cheryl, you are
Yeah.
live.
Okay. Ready?
Um, Let me hit the cancel button. My computer is trying to download from my phone because I had to plug it in. It's almost dead, but we're live
Um,
now, so go ahead.
yeah. I was targeted in Fairfax County, Virginia, 2016, and I'm not sure why. I've researched it, and they target single women. I was disabled, but before I was disabled, I had a 30-year career with the federal government and government contracting and held high-level top secret clearances. And I was very ill with severe side effects from withdrawing from Cymbalta that was given to me for fibromyalgia.
I'm familiar with
And I
fibromyalgia.
allowed,
You?
okay, should I keep going?
Yes, ma'am.
And I allowed a woman in my home to help take care of me because I was also going through breast cancer, and my cancer was so severe I was missing doctor's appointments. And when I asked her to leave my home after 2 weeks, she wouldn't leave my home and started gaslighting me. She was putting weird religious notes under my door and knocking on my door and wouldn't leave. And I called the Fairfax County Police and told them she was abusing a disabled woman and trying to steal my identity. And when she talked to them, I later found out through a police report that she told them she was hired to take care of me and that she showed them a list of all my medications. So the police believed her and told me I had to evict her. So I contacted the state of Virginia to say I was being abused as a disabled 58-year-old woman, and they sent a message to Fairfax County to come and remove her from my home. Well, Fairfax County never came, and they never called me. I found out later that I had to be 60 years old. So I went to a hotel because I had no family in the area or friends I could stay with. And she sent me a text that I see you're down at that hotel. So she was stalking me. And then she sent me a text because my best friend in Virginia Beach sent an email to my brother in Florida to come up and help me. And he said, oh, I see your brother's coming up to Florida to help me.
Sorry about that. I had to walk into a room that had a TV on. But go ahead.
Okay. And then she sent me a text naming two of my doctors that she met, saying it was a petition to commit me to the psychiatric ward. And she was gaslighting me and psychologically terrorizing me. And I found out later, I did go to the doctor at the mental health clinic in Fairfax County and asked if she was there trying to snip me. He said no. But the guy at the desk told me that she was there and that mental health was covering it up. So she continued to send me dozens of threatening texts, letters threatening to sue me and copying the Fairfax County Police and judges. And when I went to try and report it to the police, they ignored me. And then when I tried to report the police that let her stay, I was given the wall of silence.
Yes, ma'am. So they used the term, did they use the term mentally ill?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's their excuse for not doing their jobs.
I sent a petition against Ainstock to Senator Mark Warner since I was being stalked by more than one person. And I said how the police let this woman stay in my home. Well, the police did nothing and just referred me to mental health, and I was labeled paranoid and delusional.
Yes, ma'am. That's a very common tactic.
Yeah. And I spent like $60,000 staying in hotels. She tried to have me incarcerated. She tried to commit me. She tried to bankrupt me and tried to get me to commit suicide.
You know, all of the things that you just said that she tried to do actually happened to me, including me attempting suicide on multiple occasions from the gang stalking.
Really?
So I know exactly where you're at on that.
Yeah.
I ended up homeless due to mine, but this is your story. I should stop interrupting you.
Yeah, so that's okay. Yeah, I survived, but now I lost everything except my house. And I'm trying to heal now from the PTSD. I have counselors and a psychologist and a PTSD therapist that I'm working with, and I'm eating healthy and exercising, going to church, praying, and going to clear groups, and I'm volunteering to try and keep my mind off of it.
Yes, ma'am. It's difficult to do when you've got trauma like that and you lose so much.
Yeah.
I just want to say you don't sound schizophrenic. You don't sound quote unquote mentally ill.
No, I'm not. I have 5 good friends who believe what happened to me. No, I'm not schizophrenic. But my family doesn't believe me, and they think I'm mentally ill. Wow, that hurts.
It does make it difficult.
They try and isolate you.
Yes, ma'am, 100%. Prevent you from speaking to witnesses, prevent you from having witnesses in court, separate you from people who are willing to help. Yes, ma'am.
So I have no evidence. So I can't ever try and be part of a lawsuit.
Well, I have lots of evidence, but all of those things that you were afraid of losing, all of those things that you were afraid of having happen, those things actually happened to me, which is basically they call you mentally ill. They don't have to look at the evidence because they called you mentally ill. You literally have to have someone go in with you at that point. Do you have anyone to go in with you to speak to the police, or did you have to go in by yourself?
No, the police ignored me and sent me to mental health and said I was mentally ill.
But did you go in there by yourself, or did you have someone go in with you?
No, I didn't have anybody to go with me.
Yep, that's how they get you. That was the same thing with me. I had people who were willing to go in with me. The problem is all of the issues on their end and on my end made it difficult for us to meet up and have that happen. So I totally
Yeah.
get that. That's they make good money off of that, though. I mean, it is a very good money
Yeah.
maker for the government. If you go in by yourself,
Yeah.
especially if you've been called mentally ill, you literally have to have someone to go in with you.
Yeah. Well, I had a close friend of mine who was a colonel in the army. He was supporting me, and he believed me and everything. But yeah, it was hard.
Do you have any severe panic attacks or meltdowns over it?
3 years ago, I had a total mental breakdown and a suicide attempt. I ended up in the hospital. But they said I was schizophrenic.
Yes, ma'am. That's
Yeah.
a very common tactic. But are you aware that 40% of people who are diagnosed with schizophrenia are not schizophrenic?
I didn't know that.
Yes,
No,
ma'am.
I found a new psychiatrist, and he said I'm not schizophrenic. So the the doctors at this paramedics in Monroe just they would not believe me that my paranoia and delusion was from
Things that were actually happening.
yeah.
I shouldn't have finished your sentence like that. You might have wanted to say
No,
something
no,
different.
that's okay. No, that's okay. Um, yeah, I got in touch with 3 other targeted individuals in Monroe that were all disabled women and for emotional support.
Well,
So
my
that
targeting started in Virginia, so I can understand that. I
it
understand
did.
completely. It did. It started in Chesapeake,
Where?
Virginia. Chesapeake?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what my best friend was in Chesapeake.
Yes, ma'am. My best friend at the time lived in Chesapeake. We actually stopped being friends at that point, but she was pretty strung out on heroin.
Yeah, that's what you said. Why again do you think they targeted you? Did you were helping her?
No, ma'am. It's long story short. She was suicidal, and she had actually saved me from suicide just a
Okay.
year earlier. So when I went
Okay.
there, her family wasn't very accepting of me, and they had lots
Yeah.
of ideas in their head that just weren't the case. And she didn't want to tell
Yeah.
them that she invited me.
Yeah.
There was a jealousy issue with her and her sister, and
Yeah.
I had a meltdown after. Well, you know how hot it gets there in Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm a Midwest boy, you know. I grew up in Colorado and Nebraska mostly. So when I got there with the
Yeah. Right.
humidity, I dehydrated quick.
Yeah.
But instead of the police listening to me, um, they took me to Chesapeake Medical Center and just dropped me off there. And my vehicle got
Yeah.
towed and a bunch of other stuff. And I mean, I'm not capable of taking care of myself. I can barely manage to even say the things that are going on, let alone go through all of the evidence. But unlike you, I actually have a lot of evidence still. Much of it has been
What?
stolen or lost, but I still have a lot of
You have what?
evidence. I also scared
You have
off
a lot of
a lot of evidence.
yeah.
If you were living in
Yeah.
a hotel, then you have witnesses at the hotel, I'm sure.
Well, I think people at the hotel were involved in the stalking.
It could have been, but also it's
Yeah.
with what happened to me. Like there were so many people that were threatening and harassing the people that were trying to help me threatening their
Yeah.
lives, sending them pictures of their kids with nooses around their neck and things like that. That
Oh no.
the people who were trying to help me were too afraid to come forward. I ended up recording phone calls between me and them because like they were too afraid to come forward.
Yeah.
Not all of them.
Yeah. But
Some
well, how do you support yourself financially?
I don't. There was a woman who sent me $50 last week, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the first money that I have seen in, well, since before Christmas.
Well, where do you live? How,
I live
how
in
do
a
you
house
support
that
yourself?
doesn't have hot water, doesn't have a stove, and doesn't have a heater.
Kidding.
No, ma'am. But the guy that I'm staying with is a good man. He understands a lot of the situation. Well, he understands a lot of the emotional aspect of what I'm going through.
Yeah. Well, what about your family? Do they believe you and support you?
My family didn't bother to find out what was going on. The closest to anyone in my family that bothered was my dad. Um,
Yeah.
and he doesn't deal with things the way that a parent should, but he never had to be a parent. When I was growing up, I
Yeah.
grew up in the system because he couldn't stay off the cocaine, and as an adult, he
Mm,
just didn't give a shit. He was mad at me because I left his house.
yeah.
I,
Well,
I was
how old
his
are you
paycheck.
now?
I'm 39. I'll be 40 in
Yeah.
October.
Yeah. You're young. Have you
Yeah.
met any other TIs in Colorado
Well, I'm actually in Nebraska now. I can't go to
or
Colorado, but
Nebraska?
most of the homeless are targeted. Most of them.
Yeah, I believe,
They use
I
the
believe
term
you.
mentally ill. See, the cops hunt us in Colorado. And then when we try to turn them in, they prey on the fact that they can say, oh, well, most homeless people are mentally ill. So if we say that they're mentally ill, then we don't have to take their statement about police brutality. And a lot of
Right.
homeless people down there have been very brutally beaten, several of them to death by police officers.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I've heard stories like that.
but yeah, I've met quite a few
Yeah,
of them.
well, I know. I mean, I'm traumatized by what happened to me, and I know it could be worse. At least I'm not homeless.
Yes, ma'am, that is very true. There are a lot of services for homeless women, but the fact is, getting to those services costs more than you ever get out of them in most cases. And there's actually 14
Yeah,
services for women in Boulder County for every co ed service. There really aren't any men services unless you're a felon. So you have to break the law in order to get those services if you're a male.
right. Well, can you get a job?
I can't. I'm not mentally capable of the stuff that I've gone through runs through my head nonstop. Right now,
Well,
there's a.
can, can you get disability?
I was on disability. You remember I was telling you about that girl who was shot in the head?
Yeah,
Her name is Natalie Bollinger, and she's from Virginia. But I
yeah,
knew her from Boulder. I went to Virginia because she was suicidal, and she said she was going to try to kill herself if I wasn't already on the road. And like I had the money to go. I just wanted to make sure that I had some money for when I got there, so that I wasn't,
yeah,
busy scrambling. I had actually had a whole trip planned where I was going to go see a bunch of different people, and I
yeah,
was going to go see some sites. I'm really into American history, well, history in
yeah,
general, and I'm really
yeah,
patriotic. I wanted to go see Lexington Green. I wanted to go see Yorktown. I wanted to see all of that stuff while I was there,
yeah.
and I
Oh,
wanted.
yeah, yeah. A lot of history there.
Yes, ma'am.
So why did you get off disability?
Well, it's a long story, but basically, I was targeted because Natalie didn't want to tell her mom the truth. When a young woman wants to be accepted by her family, she'll basically do whatever they want in order to be accepted by him. And she didn't want to be
Yeah.
ostracized further by her family, who was just incredibly mean and unaccepting.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand enough of how cruel they were. I didn't realize that she had a family like mine until after she was dead, and they were pretending that they were going to help me. But then they were having their friends gang stalk me even further, and the gang stalking started a year earlier. It started off when I left Virginia. I left because I got my car stuck in the road, and I was severely dehydrated. I hadn't slept in days, and it just ended up. Um, Basically, I went to her house to explain that the phone that her sister had given me was acting up and malfunctioning, and it wasn't working. And I had been arguing with some racist assholes in Montana, and it was my first smartphone, so it was auto remembering the stuff that I was typing, and everything that I typed to them came out auto corrected. And then it was incredibly cracked, so it just that phone was the fucking devil, I swear to dog. But basically, when I left there, they had claimed that I had threatened them and their family, which was not the case. They felt threatened because of the whole scenario as it played out, and I wasn't allowed to defend myself. And I had tried to tell the police what was going on, but they were only interested in taking me to the hospital. And
did they diagnose you with a mental illness?
No, ma'am, not at that point. See, I was severely dehydrated, so the first thing that they did was uh, hook me up to an IV. They did diagnose me with diabetes while I was there, but I don't have diabetes. I can eat a whole loaf of bread and not die, so I'm obviously not diabetic. They did have me speak with a mental health specialist, and I explained to her what was going on with. Uh, on my birthday was the last time I saw Natalie in 2016 on my birthday, and her mom found her heroin, and I didn't want. I had a tattoo equipment and stuff like that coming, and I didn't want Natalie selling it for heroin. I also was really interested in leaving. On her birthday, when her sister went to the bathroom, Natalie explained to me that she's really sorry, but her and her sister were fighting over a boy, and it just was a really messed up situation. I want to stop there and let you know the reason that, because a lot of the people in that TI group, I'm not sure if you noticed, but they blame everything on Illuminati or aliens or shit like that.
I don't believe in aliens, but I believe in the Illuminati.
A lot of people do, and I'm not saying that the Illuminati doesn't exist, but the Illuminati doesn't give a shit about me, and they don't give a shit about you. They're not going to be involved in any of that. But in those targeted individual groups, a lot of those people, they are schizophrenic, and it shows. And with you, you're obviously not schizophrenic.
No. I had a 30-year career with the federal government contracting, and held high-level top secret clearance.
Well, that's a good reason for shutting you up. But at the same time, I think most of it was the fact that you didn't have anyone in your corner. You didn't have anyone who was willing to go to bat for you, who could actually be there for that. And that's the number one reason for being targeted.
I know.
The easiest way to get victimized is to be by yourself. Predators go after single people who are walking alone or live alone, things of that nature. And
that's what happened to me.
It's a lot easier, especially when they do it in a group, because then it's their word against yours. They call you mentally ill, and it's all said and done. After that, there's nothing you can do. The hospitals, if they get a hold of you, you are funding for them, and they will get their teeth in and they'll hold them there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she lied to the police. She lied to mental health. Instead of doing something, they covered it up
Yes, ma'am.
and just shut me out. My community failed me. I was a 35-year resident of Annandale, Virginia, in Fairfax County, and nobody cared.
Yeah, it's the America that we live in today. Nobody cares unless it's happening to them.
I feel better, a little better now that I'm back in my small hometown.
I kind of feel the same way. I'm in a small town called Chapel, Nebraska, and because what happened to Natalie was on the news. You know how it is in small towns. People hear about it and they start talking, and the rumor mill gets started. And next thing you know, you have people threatening to kill you and shit. But like with you didn't have to deal with somebody getting murdered over it. And the thing is, the police here in Chapel, Nebraska, they were made aware of the abuse that I was taking, and like I had a mental breakdown in January of 2017 over all the harassment that I was taking. I didn't actually over the harassment that I was taking.
Oh, yeah.
What had happened is the rumors got out of hand because Natalie's young and she's really pretty, and I'm an older bald guy. A lot of people, they just kept on. To this day, I continue to get harassed about it. But I've also been speaking out the whole time, anywhere that I can.
Well, why can't you get back on disability?
I need an advocate. I can't function mentally well enough to do all that, and I have to do it either online or I have to travel there. I don't have an income, so I can't afford to travel anywhere. I don't have a vehicle because my vehicles were stolen.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you try to go to the police about abuse, and the people who you're trying to report the abuse about get a hold of the police first.
Yeah.
Although I got lucky.
Young man, hang in there, and if you need somebody to talk to, give me a call.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry for making this about me. I actually wasn't trying to. But,
I wanted to hear your story.
Well, I want to add one little note there. As a male, there's stuff that females don't generally have to deal with. When the rumors got out of hand, it's because the rumors started off as I stalked her in Virginia, and then it warped into I had threatened her and her family in Virginia, and I had actually been shoved and pushed and threatened over that. And then I left for a while so that I wouldn't have to deal with that. And when I went back, the rumors had gotten worse. They had said that a girl named Maddie Boa had told them that I raped somebody in Virginia, and then that I had molested some little girl in Virginia. So I mean, Natalie was over the age of 18. She was already 18 when I was in Virginia. She was 18 when we started hanging out. She wasn't a little girl, she was an adult. And she has a legal right to hang out with and be friends with whoever she wants to.
Yeah.
When I left Virginia, though, like I blocked her and her sister on Facebook, and I got rid of their numbers, and I left. I was done with that. But then I got back in contact with them when the threats and the harassment started, and Natalie just didn't believe me, is what the issue was. And I didn't know how to take screenshots. I didn't know how to use the computer for any of that. Like, I didn't know how to do Facebook. Somebody else had to help me to hook up a Facebook account. Somebody else had to help me to hook up my Gmail account. Somebody else had to help me with.
Do you have any sisters or brothers that support you?
No, ma'am. My family doesn't care about me. They're a bunch of druggies and wingnuts. My little brother is a child molester, so me and him don't get along. My older brother is a meth addict, and that was one of the most hurtful things is that he's homeless in Boulder, Colorado, and I just have wanted to see him and hang out with him, and I can't. I can't go to Boulder, Colorado without being threatened, harassed, or assaulted.
Yeah.
And my little sister, I love her. She's probably She's crazy. I mean, she's nuttier than fucking squirrel turds, but she really does have a good heart. I guess I talked too long. Um, I suppose that's the end of the conversation. See if I can figure out how to do this.